Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. And this is our Christmas special. This is the episode that I reflect on all the things that have resonated with me in the first 6 months of this podcast. It's been a fascinating journey, and I share also what I'm grateful for as well in terms of all the wonderful guests I've met and everything else that goes with that. I hope you enjoy the episode and let me know what you think. Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy-Wilcox, and I'm delighted to be with you for today's Christmas special. Now, I'd say this time last year, I didn't even know that the podcast was going to be in existence. Never mind 3 months away. Or even 6 months away. It was actually 7 months away because we started our podcasting journey together in June 2022. And here we are, 6 months down the line. In a couple of weeks, it'll be 6 months exactly. And it's gone in a flash. I just cannot believe I'm sitting here in front of you recording what is our first ever Game of Leadership Christmas special. So I thought it would be fun to chat to you all about what's happened for me since it started and how I'm finding the podcast and what I'm enjoying most. And so far we've had 11 different guests sharing their stories of their leadership journey, how they got to be where they are today, their take on game and leadership. And if you're an avid listener, I hope you are. If not, you can go back and listen to as many episodes as you want. The game and leadership take of each of our guests has been completely unique. And then, of course, you've got the pivotal moments in their third episodes. These are the stories that they share of their most challenging moments and how they often end up doing whatever it is they're doing right at the time that we're chatting to them. So it really has been a fascinating journey with some amazing conversation. And my life is so much richer for having had these conversations with my fabulous guests. I've learnt so much from them over the last, almost 6 months. It's just been phenomenal. And, I cannot wait for the next 6 months. And you know what? In a blink of an eye, it's going to be a year. It feels a long time away just now. But the 29th of June 2023 will be here before I know it, before you know it, and we'll all be thinking, gosh, we've done a year of this podcast. How did that happen? Well, what an honour and a privilege it is to chat to my guests. When they decide that they're going to come and join me, and they allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to come and chat with me and share their stories. Now, I was casting my mind back, and of course there's moments that completely stand out for me. And I think what I wanted to do when I first set up the podcast was to share my leadership knowledge and experience, but give others a platform to do the same. And I really think we've achieved that goal that I kind of had in mind in the first place. Now, we started off episodes 1 to 3 hearing my own story, because it would have been strange if I'd not shared all of that with you first. And that feels like an eternity ago, having recorded those episodes. And I know that with each episode that we record, I learn a little bit more and how to do things a little bit better and a little bit differently to keep people entertained, and wanting more next time. So, it's been a real learning journey for me as well as everyone else, because people come on here chatting to me and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that in things that I share with them. Or they discover something about themselves as they're talking and chatting, or things that they'd forgotten about. We're all getting to see things through each other's lens. We're so often focused on how we do things and how we see life in our view, that we forget that there are other viewpoints, and lenses to look through. So, having this consistent reminder when I'm chatting to the guests has been just wonderful. And it helps open my mind to how things are just different for everybody. Even those you know well and you think you know what they might be thinking, maybe you don't, and it's really fantastic having those discovery discussions and getting clarity on what you're thinking when you're coming from this way and what someone else is thinking when they're coming from this way. So that's been a real amazing part of this learning journey for me, and podcasting with my fabulous guests. And yeah, I think I just said at the beginning, a year ago, this wasn't even in the pipeline. I'd really got so concerned about what I might do a podcast on, and what it would be called, all these things. How would I get any guests to come and join me? That I really let that get in my way. Well, I'm so glad, so grateful to my good friend Darren, who was with us for episodes 4 to 6, who had a real coaching conversation with me. He asked me all the right questions, and yes, I had all those answers within myself, but I needed somebody just like Darren to help me open up my thinking and allow the answers to come out. And now here we are with the geeky game of leadership. If you don't know by now, I'm a bit of a sort of sci-fi fantasy fan in terms of Star Wars, Star Trek, Indiana Jones, all those kinds of things. And Game of Thrones, the original series, was a real big part of my life for, gosh, was it 9 or 10 seasons? So 9 or 10 years that went on for. That when I was chatting to Darren, we talked about, well, what could we call it? And all it took was for Darren to say to me, your geek side needs to come out, Paula. And I went, what, like Game of Leadership, as in Game of Thrones? And it was that aha moment for me, that I just knew that was the right name for the podcast. And boy, has it facilitated the most incredible conversations over the last 6 months. So it's just been such fun for me to chat with people in a very informal way, but get so much learning that we can then apply formally, if you like, to our own leadership. And that's been the beauty of this. And I remember talking to Jodie Salt, who's a good friend of mine. And, Jode's, it's a year and a few months now since she published her book, Woman Up. And we were talking about that in her episodes and what that meant to her, and how she talked about Violet, her alter ego. And, when she's faced with dilemmas, what would Violet say or do? And I think I learned a lot from that. And I don't necessarily have certainly not a Violet, because that doesn't, the idea of having somebody that I can turn to internally and ask definitely resonates with me, but mine's not called Violet. And I'm still wondering what mine might be called, but I definitely have them in there. And I often talk about my inner guru and my inner critic. So I would think that my inner guru is my violet, but and probably my inner critic as well will be my violet, because they don't always have their best day, of course, as much as we try. So, some fascinating learnings, and especially how our own behaviours show up in our leadership and how we behave day to day. And of course, that's one of the big things that I really, really wanted to come from this podcast, is helping others to learn how to extract the things that resonate most with them and bring them into their own leadership on a day-to-day basis. And this is why I love doing every 10th episode. And I know we're not on the 10th episode with this one, but it would have been rude of me not to do a Christmas special, I think. It's always good fun to have a bit of sparkle and bling and colourful lights and a good reflection on our gratitude for the year. And I'll do that in just a minute. But moving on to the next 9 episodes, again, I had some incredible guests with me. Just trying to remember all the names. Amy, who's a long-standing friend of mine and just the most incredible instructional designer and leadership professional, helping support others. We've done lots of work together on purpose. And she's just an incredible font of leadership and development knowledge. And having her as part of my life has been fascinating and a real privilege. And she shared so much with us in her 3 episodes. And then we had Matteo, who's my Italian buddy, Matteo Gorio, who's high up in Barilla Foods marketing over in Italy. And he just, again, brought a very different and unique perspective onto leadership and how that plays out for him in the work that he does and in his life. It's just incredible to think about the fact that our lives are so complex and so busy, but being able to quiet our mind and take a moment to listen to something like a podcast that provokes different thoughts and makes space in our brain, if you like, to be able to learn new things. And as Amy said, to allow that sort of sticky knowledge, if you like, that sticky learning. So things, how do we listen to my podcast, for example, and the gems that the guests are sharing all about leadership? How do we make that stick? Well, of course, going and taking action on it, implementing something and practicing it and making it become a habit. That's a big part of how we make these things stick. And I know each and every one of you will have taken lots of different things from the podcast, and it's just fascinating. So I can't wait to hear your comments as you listen to this and as you're sharing. And you'd think after all this time, rookie error, I've left my phone on and it just pinged when I'm recording a podcast. So you'd think I'd have learned that by now, wouldn't you? I've just switched it to silence. So hopefully we won't get any more pings and dings. So yeah, thinking about all those different experiences. And then, of course, mission, purpose, values come into it a lot when we're thinking about our own leadership. And something I've learned later in life and now really, really guides me is doing things that only feel aligned with me and who I am, rather than sort of being almost forced down a path to do things that don't sit well, don't resonate with you, just don't feel right for you. And that will be different for each and every one of us. And, connecting with my purpose feels like an eternity ago now. I think it'll be 4 years any minute now, 4 years ago any minute now. It just has changed my life and the way that I look at things, the way I approach things and people. And I love that. I'm so privileged to have had the chance to, meet with Nick and be able to discover, or uncover rather, because it's always been there, but I just wasn't connected to it in terms of my own purpose. And now I get to do that with my clients too, building those foundations of their leadership. And a purpose is a huge, huge part of that, along with your mindset, being in the right place, and of course you're building yourself for your own resilience. And I do that through my 5 R's program, Realization to Results. And it's honestly a privilege to be able to support clients to do all of that themselves. Okay, they need me for the how and the guide, the guiding hand, that support, that accountability. But they're the ones that have to commit and take responsibility and actions to make those changes in their own leadership journey. And it's fascinating. And that's why I love what I do so, so much, because these people get to change their own lives. It's truly transformational for people. And it really makes a huge, huge difference to how they show up for themselves. There's some interesting stuff. I'm just reminding myself, something that's come up a lot with a few different guests, and I can't help saying it, but since opening my own business, I feel much, much more the master of my own destiny. And I know that sounds all very grand, but it really resonates for me. It's something that I hold true to myself. I always sort of talk with my clients about the choices that they have. You know what? That applies to me as well, which is, sometimes can blow your mind when you think you're stuck in a rut, but actually you really have a choice for these things that you do. And yes, you have to pick your timing, pick the way that you're going to do it carefully, not leave yourself vulnerable and open to difficult situations, doing things in the right way, of course, when you're ready. But there are choices. And I love that in the work that I do. And I love that for myself. And it's been really eye-opening, this journey. And, being able to talk about all this stuff on the podcast has just been incredible. So stepping into my own power, as Siobhan shared with us when she was our guest a while ago, is so true. Master of your own destiny, stepping into your own power, whichever way you want to look at it, but taking back that control and choosing the things that you want to do and get involved with. So these are all things that were sort of there, but in talking to my amazing guests in the last almost 6 months, in 2 weeks' time, it's really reminded me of all these incredibly valuable discussions that I've had and been privileged to such incredible guidance, information, tips, tricks, games, ideas. My goodness me, we've had so much value shared from the guests, and everybody's looked at it differently. And they're all taking their own calculated risks to get to where they want to be. And I encourage all of you to do the same. I would love to hear your thoughts on our first 6 months of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders, because it's been one incredible journey for me and my listeners. But knowing how it touches all of you, and I can't thank all of you enough for the 5-star reviews and the actual written reviews that I've received, saying how much you're enjoying it, how much things resonate with you. It's just incredible to know that the very thing that I wanted this to do, which is reach all of you and help you show up and be the leader that you want to be, because of the conversations I'm having with my amazing guests. It's just what else could I want for Christmas? Probably nothing, apart from my family being well, and just getting to spend time with them on Christmas Day, which is going to be incredible. What things that we're grateful for, I mentioned that earlier, is that I had the courage to do this in the first place. And secondly, my amazing guests who have all showed up and just gone for it in our chats and discussions. And all the value, all of the ratings, all of the reviews I've received from all of you. It's been an incredible second half to 2022. And who knows what's in store for us in 2023. But whatever it is, boy, is it going to be exciting. And I'm going to be right there with you on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. And I absolutely cannot wait to see what our next guests have in store for us in the coming months. And as I say, up to June 29th, 2023, where it will be a date for the 1-year anniversary of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate it, and love to hear from you. You'll always hear back from me. Thank you so much, and bye for now. Thank you for listening to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. We had to do a Christmas special, and I really hope you've enjoyed it. It was all the things that meant something to me for the first 6 months of the podcast, and all that remains is to wish you a wonderful holiday season. I hope you have a great time with your family and friends, and wishing you all the very best for 2023, and I'll see you in January. Bye for now.